It's Chad Dukes versus the world, and it is Wednesday, so that means it's time for Crossing the Streams. And we're going to start with where all the money's made, where you pay 20. Wait, hey, don't play that yet. An itchy trigger finger in there, thumb. All right, play it now.
Movies.
See how much better it sounded when you played it where I said it should be played? Brian Salisbury joins me, co-host of Junk Food Cinema on FilmSchoolRejects.com, co-founder of OneOfUs.net. Brian, how you doing,
sir.
bud? Good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me back.
Always my pleasure. Just from the jump here, I gotta get your. I think you can tell by the theme music for this segment, I'm a Ghostbusters guy through and through. They just, I guess, the reboot lands the writer of The Heat. I think that means that Melissa McCarthy probably will end up showing up. Look, I got nothing against Melissa McCarthy. Funny chick. My whole deal is, for the same reason why I didn't want Apatow and his crew getting a hold of this thing, is I want a Ghostbusters movie. I don't want a Judd Apatow, Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill movie. For the same reason I don't want a Melissa McCarthy movie, because you just kind of get that brand shoehorned into a beloved franchise. What do you make of this hiring?
I agree with you, but I'm not really concerned, because I think at this point the new script would just be about the Ghostbusters fighting the specters of all the other scripts that have died along the way for Ghostbusters 3.
I don't know. I want it to be so good. It's so important to me, and I just feel like it's not going to be. All right, let's move forward. That's something that's just breaking. Another thing that broke yesterday, I guess. Robert Downey Jr. comes out and says Iron Man 4 is a go. A, are you surprised? And B, how long do you think they're going to be able to keep this group of quote-unquote Avengers together? Eventually, these guys are going to get into their 40s, 50s, whoever how the hell knows how long it takes. They're going to have to probably diversify the portfolio, are they not?
Yeah, no, they absolutely will, but as long as the money keeps rolling in, and it is an ungodly amount of money that's coming in, I don't see any end in sight. And then when they get old, we can just call them, expendables and just keep going forward.
Those are pretty good lines, sir. The Gone Girl, it's getting tremendous reviews. I haven't read the book. What did you think of it? Is it worth all of the hype? And if you go in without knowing the twists and turns, does that make it a more pleasurable viewing experience?
Well, let me stop you right there. There is no way this movie is going to be a pleasurable experience for anyone. Whatever you do not take a date to see this movie. I mean, you mentioned Judd Apatow. I thought he had the most cynical view on modern marriage.
Yeah.
But next to Fincher, Apatow looks like Frank freaking Capra. I mean, this thing, it hurts. I mean, remember when the villains in Fincher movies just cut people's heads off?
Yeah.
Remember when they would just do that and it would be over with? In this movie, the things that happen are so much worse than that.
I mean, that's a bold look. First of all, I'm a big David Fincher guy, but you're talking about Seven. I mean, you're talking about Fight Club. I mean, there's some pretty dark movies he's got circulating around out there already. You're saying this is way worse than that?
This is, in my opinion, his darkest film.
Wow.
And it's deceptively so, because it's going to make you think it's one thing, and then once you get to the end, you're going to realize just how bleak this movie really is.
Good Lord. Now I feel like I have to go see it. All right, well then, I want to ask you about, I saw the Equalizer, which I'm a rube. I didn't know it was a TV show. I just thought it was another Denzel movie, and then I went out and checked it out, and I'll tell you what, man, if you ever want to see Denzel Washington cut someone's head off with a hedge trimmer, it's definitely it's a lot of fun. Why do you think Denzel he's clearly one of the most established actors that we have. He can do it all. Why do you think he feels so comfortable taking these kind of, the taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3 action style movies when generally a lot of people think that he's capable of a lot more?
I think it probably has to do with the relationship he built with Tony Scott over the years. You mentioned taking Pelham 1, 2, 3, and then, of course, Man on Fire, which I feel Equalizer is almost a spiritual sequel or spiritual prequel to. But I will tell you one thing about Equalizer. You will never look at Home Depot the same way again. I want to shop there every day now, just in case that stuff happens.
I mean, he killed 45 people. You know what? I don't want to spoil too much. It's just very entertaining. I would definitely go see it if you want a larf. At Bry Guy Salisbury. Check out Junk Food Cinema on FilmSchoolRejects.com. Brian, as always, thank you, buddy.
Thanks a lot. Always a pleasure.
There he is. It is Crossing the Stream, so let's talk some video games.
Video games.
My guy Michael Futter, news editor for Game Informer, is back with me on the show. Michael, great to talk to you, bud. How was your week?
I'm doing all right, Chad. How you doing?
Doing great. Okay, I got a couple things I need to bring up right at the jump. First of all, have you had any hands-on time with Shadows of Mordor?
I actually last played it at E3. I don't even have a copy of it yet, but I will tell you it is top of my list for games that next time I make a run out to go get them, because it's doing some very, very cool stuff that we haven't seen before.
It has, and then you know what I'm talking about, Ben. I bought it, I got some hands-on time, and I thought it was just going to be another, maybe an Assassin's Creed clone, and it is that. It's got a lot of Arkham in it, but it gets back to something that I think that you and I probably agree on, that a lot of people are overly critical of games. If something I can just sit down and have a blast playing, it doesn't have to change my existence. Everything doesn't have to be Last of Us or BioShock Infinite. If it doesn't have to move me, if I can just sit down and have a good time, I feel like not enough people appreciate that in their games nowadays.
Oh, man. Why do we do this if we don't do it to sit down and have fun?
Yeah.
And Shadow of Mordor, especially with the way that you can kind of sneak up to an orc and, send him on a mission to go kill his boss and then swoop in and kill them both and screw up Sauron's plans. I mean, that's the stuff that new gen is all about.
I need more of that in my life.
Yes. Yes, more bending orcs to your will.
How's Destiny still being received? I beat the thing. I'm not a huge multiplayer guy, so I haven't spent much time with it since then. When can we expect some DLC?
First DLC pack, the first major DLC pack, comes in December, which is going to add a few new missions, a new strike, and I think a new raid, so some more of that co-op content. They have patched it. I don't know if you or your listeners have been following online the joke accounts about the Cryptarch, which is one of the vendors in the game, and how he always seems to mess with players. He's still doing that, but not quite as much. They made him a little bit nicer. I think Bungie said they showed him a sack of doorknobs to fix it.
Well, that's good. We got the pre-sequel coming out here for Borderlands. What else this fall are you looking forward to the most?
WWE looks pretty fantastic. The first new-gen version of that on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. November's starting to fill up, too. Call of Duty this year looks pretty good. Dragon Age, Far Cry 4, both Assassin's Creed games that come on November 11th. There's one for new consoles and PC, and then there's one for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 as well. I mean, we're just getting started here. Fall is heating up.
Fall is falling, to be sure. It's at Futterish on Twitter. Give him a follow, and of course in Game Informer as well. Michael, always appreciate the time, sir. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Take care, Ted.
There he is, Michael Futter. And again, I know this is nerdy. I know a lot of you maybe don't play this type of games. The Shadows of Mordor game, if you like the kind of running around Grand Theft Auto Assassin's Creed style games, and then you're just chopping the heads off everybody for 1,000 miles around, it's definitely worth your time. It's definitely worth picking up. Now, talk of television. Who doesn't love television?
TV.
There it is. Roth Cornett is back on the show. She is the entertainment editor for IGN, one of my favorite websites to talk some Magic Box. Roth, talk with me about Homeland now that they've moved on and they're dealing without one of their major characters. I watched both the first two episodes. They were grim. They were realistic. They dealt with stuff that feels like it's currently going on in our world. It's everything I kind of like about Homeland, which is surprising considering my favorite character is no longer a part of the show.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
We've been talking about this a bunch, how they managed to save this series when it looked like there was absolutely no saving it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because my colleague, Scott, when he wrote his review, his strapline was Brody who? And you're right. I mean, they kept Brody alive because we loved him and he was a great character, but ultimately, I think they should have stuck to their guns and given him the initial ending they were going to give him in the first season. Because the show would have been, as we see, is stronger when it moves on. Instead of, it was belaboring this, like, love story. God, oh, goodness. It just got melodramatic and ridiculous. It is tight. It is sharp. It is smart and grim. It is absolutely right. Everything we want Homeland to be. I've seen the third episode, too, and it is equally good.
That's great. And Mandy Patinkin is so good. Claire Danes is so good that, you lose a character that's as strong as Brody, and you think, okay, I don't know how you move on, and and though you realize just how much you enjoy watching those other characters on television. I think they've done a very good job thus far.
I think so too, and I think it really demonstrates that what Homeland is about is these characters for sure, but really these stories too that they're embroiled in, right? We're already caught up in what's going on now.
All right, I'm caught up with Gotham, and again, I'm trying to give it as much of a shot as I can because it's early on. I understand that. I don't know if you ever heard of Ron and Fez, but Ron Bennington said something about television that I thought was really, really smart. He said, look, I don't think anybody should be allowed to review TV shows until 6 episodes are out of the way, because you're introducing all these characters. You're trying to jam in as much as you possibly can in the pilot. It's Batman. I like the fact that they kind of based it in this universe, but the show kind of is proving why I was nervous that it was going to be on a network instead of something like AMC or FX or one of these other, cable networks that kind of are known for being more chance takers.
Yeah, I will say that I do think Gotham is getting better as it goes along, and I think it's trying to accomplish sort of a really tough balance, and it's struggling. It's struggling to find its tone. I mean, the whole idea of entering Gotham, this Batman universe that's just left of center, it's got to feel kind of off. Is a hard balance to strike. It can end up being for the actors. They can end up going into overacting, or they don't give enough, and then they just seem like, well, do you even know what world you're in? But I think the person that's nailing it is the Penguin. Cobblepot is so good.
Yeah.
I think he's nailing kind of that weird left of center tone, but I still buy it with him. There's some people that are getting too big.
I agree.
And it's a little weird, but I think where you're right is that I want it to be more, and not for its own sake, but I feel like it wants to be more violent than it is. And I'm not advocating violence for violence sake, but they're cutting away. Like, they didn't show Selena ripping out those eyeballs, and I feel like for her character, she would be such a richer character if, she could be this savvy little girl one second and this animal the next. You believe that's going to become Catwoman, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree, and it would be true to the character as well. One last question I had for you, and this is it's related to what we do here at the sports station, but baseball's doing this bit where they're having to serve 10 mistresses. They got this deal. They're putting games on Fox Sports 1, which nobody really has. They're putting games on their own network. The UFC's got a deal with Fox Sports 1 where they're putting it on there, and it just seems to me that it's more and more of a process to get when you get your product on television to where it's going to be. Do you see this all kind of going in the direction of what the WWE did, where a lot of these sporting networks, a lot of these people that have this content, they put out their own network and then they just drive people to that? Because it's becoming more and more difficult. FXX, I went through the same thing when they started throwing shows on there. I didn't know where the hell FXX is. I still don't. And then I stopped watching shows that I normally watch for the league. It's Always Sunny. With the expansion of channels and it becoming more and more difficult to find them, how do you think television is going to adapt?
Well, I think that a lot of us feel like probably within the next several years it's going to be a la carte, the a la carte model that people talk about. And there's a big battle going on about that right now because it would put many companies out of business if we were really to have that. But it's basically, it would be a wider version of the Netflix model where, you sort of order the shows that you want less than the networks that you want per season. But it's really a mess right now because it's so expensive because it is so fragmented to keep up with everything. You can't keep track of anything. Part of me almost feels like the studios should have their own hubs. You know what I mean? Because if you look at even the DC shows, because they're on different networks, they're disconnected. Some of them are, and it doesn't really make sense. And you're going to start seeing multiple versions of the same characters and things like that. That doesn't make sense to me. It's all put out by Warner Brothers Television. It would be better if we could connect it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you make a great point, and I think that more and more things are going to become a la carte, as you described. It's at Roth Cornett on Twitter. Give her a follow and read everything on IG. And Roth, as always, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Great time.
That always is. It's always a great time when you're doing
Crossing the Streams every Wednesday on Chad Dukes versus the